Hello everyone, if you're new to my channel, Sennelier Art, welcome. If you've been with me for a while, welcome back. In this tutorial, I'm going to show and teach you guys how to mix and blend dark olive flesh tones in watercolor. When it comes to drawing or painting in color, I have a system that I stick to every single time to ensure that I get optimal results. With the watercolor medium, I stick to a system and a limited color palette that really simplifies the painting process. When I start any portrait in watercolor, I begin with a very light hand and a light color palette. So like here I started with a little burnt sienna mixed with white for the highlights, and then I gradually darkened the sienna with less and less white mixed in, and a lot more layers in areas where necessary. Like here with the nose, I'm really adding more burnt sienna layers, less white, and then going in the dark areas of the nose with a dark umber or like a really dark brown color. It really just depends on what you're seeing in your photo that you are copying from, what colors you want to use, and what value scales you want to put and where on the portrait. The great thing about working in watercolor is the blending. It's all very straightforward and very flexible if you are working wet on wet. Now in some areas, like with the eyes here, I am working wet on dry because I wanted to add a few more details and be a little more specific as opposed to suggestive with the details and the features. And that's what you want to be mindful of when you are painting with watercolor. Especially in portraits, you want to add more detail in areas where there is more detail, but you still don't want to go so over the top. You can still be a little bit suggestive and adding detail only where it really matters and makes a difference to do so. If you've gone too dark, like when you're working on the features, you can go in with a tissue or a paper towel and lift that color up and do a little erasing. That's what's wonderful about the watercolor medium. You can actually make edits as if it were a dry medium. For the lower part of the face, I dampened the chin and the jaw area there and added a dark umber or a dark brown in the areas where there were shadows that needed to be very dark. I layered the burnt sienna over the cheekbone here, went in with my tissue to lighten up that cheekbone because there was a pretty stark highlight on those cheekbones, and I went in more with just a watered down brush just to make sure the paint was all smoothed over. And I added some more dark umber shading here. I added the burnt sienna over the chin and the cheek here just to create a little more depth and dimension. And I also want to emphasize you must wet your paper first, like I did with the forehead here. As you can see, again, a very light hand with the blending and the mixing, starting off with burnt sienna and just a little bit of white mixed in, then gradually going with a darker brown or a darker umber to the hand here, the crevices of her fingers. I relied on that dark umber for the dark spots here. When the face dries a little bit, you can add a little more wet on dry just to get some bolder shading and shadowing in the areas where it's necessary. If you really want to master the watercolor medium, it takes a lot of practice and trial and error. And that's okay, you know, it takes a lot of time to really get the values down, the coloration down. But once you get the hang of it, you'll see that it's quite easy and simplicity is key.